Sawyer interview. Sally Field has written a new book, and in it, memories too painful to share until now. Tonight, behind one of America's most celebrated smiles, the abuse she suffered as a child. This evening, Diane and Sally Field and what she's now revealing.
Done. What came over me? Who am I? It was wonderful. I loved every minute of it.
For generations, Sally Field has been a household name, celebrated for her extraordinary range as an actress and her unforgettable roles in films and television that have left an indelible mark on American culture.
Performance on stage was some scenes from Romeo and Juliet when I was 13. And I was truly, I must have been dreadful. I had no idea what I was.
From her early days in lighthearted comedies to her Oscar-winning performances that defined a new level of depth and vulnerability on screen, she seemed to embody success, resilience, and timeless talent. To the public, she was the woman who could do it all. A star who radiated warmth while tackling the most demanding roles with grace. Yet behind the acclaim and the carefully crafted image of Hollywood glamour, her private life has been defined by heartache, painful secrets, and personal battles that few could have imagined. Now, at 78, layers of her story reveal haunting truths and tragedies endured. Join us as we tell the tale of a Hollywood legend, reveal the depths of a woman whose struggles mirror the fragility of life itself, and a reality that made her journey both heartbreaking and unforgettable. Sally Field may have had the face of an angel on screen, but her life was anything but serene. As a child, she faced struggles that initiated a long symphony of suffering she endured throughout her life. She was introduced to concepts of pain that no one should have to encounter, even as an adult.
Or how is it not always connected to danger? It's always connected to danger, shame, and loss.
So with that in mind, the story shall start from the very beginning, when her childhood innocence was tainted by pain, profound and ever-present. Born into brokenness and a mother's absent love.
Was replicating things in my childhood in the pattern that I couldn't get out of. I only recognized love if I disappeared.
Sally Margaret Field was born on the 6th of November, 1946, in Pasadena, California, into what appeared to be an ordinary post-war American family. Her father, Richard Dryden Field, had served as an officer in the military, while her mother, Margaret Moreland, was a lively woman with ambitions of her own. Yet, almost from the moment Sally entered the world, cracks in the foundation of her family began to show. Her parents' marriage was unstable, and by the time she was just 4 years old, they divorced. For a child, divorce always feels like the sky being ripped apart, but for her, it was the first taste of loss, instability, and confusion. Her father drifted away from the household, and her mother quickly remarried, attempting to patch together a new life that she hoped would bring security. That remarriage, however, would become one of the darkest shadows in her early years. Her mother's new husband was Jack Mahoney, a well-known Hollywood stuntman and actor. On the surface, Jack Mahoney seemed larger than life, the handsome and charming type admired by many in the film industry. He was a man used to commanding attention and respect, but behind closed doors, the charm gave way to a far more sinister reality. When Sally was still a young girl, he began abusing her intimately. It was a secret Sally was forced to carry alone, without the words, strength, or support to resist. For a child who should have been learning trust, love, and safety, the lessons she received instead were betrayal, fear, and violation. This abuse didn't just rob her of innocence, it rewired the way she viewed herself and the world. It created a sense of shame so heavy that she carried it in silence for decades, unable to speak even to her mother about what was happening. In her later memoir, In Pieces, she revealed how trapped and powerless she felt in those years, forced to smile in public while suffocating under the torment behind closed doors. Yet she endured because there was no other choice available for a child her age. Sally's relationship with her mother was complex. Margaret was glamorous, ambitious, and devoted to keeping up appearances, but she seemed blind, or perhaps chose to be blind to what her daughter was going through. Whether she suspected and ignored it, or whether she was simply consumed by her own struggles, Sally could never fully know. What she did know was that the person who should have been her fiercest protector was often absent, emotionally unavailable, or distracted by her own needs. This lack of protection deepened her wounds. She felt both betrayed and abandoned, left to face the storm alone. For years, she wrestled with conflicting emotions, love for her mother, resentment at her neglect, and grief for the bond they might have shared if only Margaret had noticed or acted. Outside of home, she searched for a sense of belonging. She attended Birmingham High School in Van Nuys, California, where she quickly learned how to wear masks just to survive. Among classmates, she seemed cheerful, lively, and even mischievous, often hiding the turmoil that consumed her privately. Drama classes became her refuge. On stage, she could finally let her emotions flow, but under the guise of another character. Acting allowed her to channel her pain into something creative, something that gave her both release and purpose. For the first time, she felt seen, and not for the broken girl she was at home, but for the depth she brought to her performances. Teachers noticed her talent early. She had a raw ability to inhabit emotions with startling authenticity, a skill that was born not from training, but from lived experience. When other students treated acting as fun, she treated it like survival. Every monologue, every scene was a lifeline. Even so, school could not fully erase the weight she carried. She was small in stature, sensitive by nature, and felt perpetually different. She longed for the stability other children seemed to take for granted, but her reality was fractured. As she grew into a teenager, she perfected the art of silence. She never spoke of what was happening with her stepfather, never admitted to the shame that burned inside her, and never allowed anyone to glimpse the depth of her pain. Silence, however, has a cost. It isolates and convinces the sufferer that their experience is unique, their suffering invisible, their worth diminished. For her, silence became both a shield and a prison. It also created an almost unbearable pressure inside her. That pressure would later explode in the honesty of her performances, but in those early years, it left her feeling like a vessel about to shatter. Like many children who grow up in homes of abuse, Sally longed for love and stability, even when she had no model of what healthy love looked like. She wanted approval from her mother, from her peers, from anyone who might tell her she was worthy. This craving would follow her into adulthood, shaping her relationships, sometimes pulling her toward men who echoed the same controlling dynamics she had endured as a child. But in her youth, it simply left her vulnerable. Despite all of this, there was something in Sally that refused to be extinguished. Beneath the layers of shame and silence, she carried a hidden fire. It was that fire that kept her going, that whispered to her in drama class that maybe she could be more than her pain, that maybe she could use it to become something greater. Her childhood did not break her. It instead forged her. It created an empathy so deep, an honesty so raw, that when she eventually stepped into the public eye, she could connect with audiences in a way few others could. Before the world ever saw her smile on screen, that smile was already a mask she had been wearing for years. By the time she reached her late teens, Sally Field was a young woman carrying scars most could not imagine. To the outside world, she seemed like any other California girl, pretty, energetic, and filled with potential. The abuse from her stepfather had left wounds that would last a lifetime. Her relationship with her mother was strained by absence and unspoken betrayal. Her sense of self was fragile, her trust in others deeply shaken. Yet, she was standing on the edge of something extraordinary. She didn't know it then, but the very pain that had threatened to destroy her was about to become the well of truth that would define her artistry. What came next would shock even Sally herself. At just 19 years old, she was plucked from obscurity and thrown into the spotlight. A career born from contradiction. By the time Sally Field turned 19, she was a young woman carrying secrets far too heavy for her years. Yet, just as she stood on the edge of adulthood, fate thrust her into a world where she would be expected to smile, charm, and delight millions. In 1965, she landed her first major role in the television series Gidget. Based on the popular surf girl character, the show presented her as the quintessential all-American teenager, bubbly, carefree, and endlessly optimistic. The irony was cruel. She was playing a character defined by innocence and joy, while her own youth had been marred by abuse, instability, and silence. Still, the camera adored her. Audiences fell instantly in love with her wide eyes and infectious energy. To them, she was the very embodiment of teenage purity. The show only lasted a single season, but it was enough to make her a recognizable face and a rising star. For Sally, however, the role was both a blessing and a burden. She craved the validation it brought, yet it deepened her sense of contradiction. On screen, she was America's sweetheart, while off-screen, she was still a fragile young woman struggling to reconcile her past with her present. After Gidget was canceled, she was quickly cast in what would become her most infamous role, the flying nun. The premise was absurd. Sally played Sister Bertrille, a novice nun in Puerto Rico whose oversized habit allowed her to literally fly in the wind. To audiences, it was a quirky, lighthearted family comedy. To her, it was humiliating. She knew the role made her a joke in Hollywood circles, pegging her as a lightweight incapable of serious acting. Behind her wide-eyed smile, she felt invisible, her intelligence dismissed, her depth ignored. The role also came at a difficult personal time. In 1968, midway through the series, she married her high school sweetheart, Stephen Craig. Within months, she was pregnant with their first child, Peter. By 22, she was both a television star and a young mother, torn between the demands of Hollywood and the responsibilities of raising a family. The public saw a wholesome, successful actress with a picture-perfect life. Privately, Sally felt trapped, caught in a role she despised, in a marriage that would soon begin to fracture, and under the weight of a secret past she still could not share. When The Flying Nun ended in 1970, she found herself at a crossroads. Typecast as the cute girl in lightweight comedies, she struggled to convince casting directors she could handle more serious roles. Her career seemed to stall, and with it, her confidence. Determined to prove herself, she sought out real training and enrolled in the Actors Studio under the legendary Lee Strasberg. It was here that her life began to change. Lee saw the truth in her. He recognized her raw talent, her emotional honesty, and the well of pain she could draw from. Under his guidance, Sally learned to harness her trauma and turn it into art. This decision would alter the course of her career forever. In 1976, Sally was cast in the television miniseries Sybil, playing a young woman with dissociative identity disorder caused by childhood abuse. The role was harrowing, requiring her to portray 16 different personalities, each with distinct traits, voices, and emotional states. For her, it was more than just a role. It was a reckoning. In Sybil's fractured psyche, she saw a mirror of her own childhood. The abuse, the silence, the compartmentalization of pain. She understood it intimately, and what others might have had to imagine. Sally had lived. Her performance was extraordinary. She won an Emmy Award for the role, silencing the critics who had dismissed her as just the flying nun. More importantly, she proved to herself that she was more than the caricatures Hollywood had tried to confine her to. Unfortunately, with that triumph came an emotional toll. Reliving trauma through art may have been cathartic, but it was also deeply painful. Every scene chipped away at old scars, forcing her to confront memories she had long tried to bury. These scars had a profound effect on her life, and it wasn't limited to her professional life, but even her love life. As her career reached new heights, Sally's personal life remained turbulent. Her marriage to Stephen Craig ended in 1975, leaving her a single mother to 2 young sons. She poured herself into her work, but her longing for love and stability never faded. In the late 1970s, she entered a high-profile relationship with actor Burt Reynolds. To the public, they were Hollywood's golden couple, the picture of glamour, magnetic, and inseparable. But behind the curtain, their relationship was punched full of holes. Sally later revealed that Burt was controlling and emotionally manipulative. He belittled her, chipped away at her confidence, and left her feeling small. To outsiders, she was the lucky woman dating one of the biggest stars of the era. To her, it was another chapter of being overshadowed, another reminder of how fragile her sense of self remained. Sally's determination to be taken seriously as an actress paid off in ways few could have imagined. In 1979, she starred in Norma Ray, playing a factory worker who becomes a union activist. The role was gritty, powerful, and worlds away from her sitcom days. For the first time, she was not just a television star, she was an artist of the highest caliber. Her performance earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress. In 1984, she won her second Oscar for Places in the Heart. By then, she had cemented her place as one of Hollywood's finest actresses. Still, even in her victories, there was pain. The very industry that had once mocked her now celebrated her. But she still carried the wounds of her childhood, the struggles of her marriages, and the scars of relationships that left her diminished.
And I can't deny the fact that you like me right now. You like me.
Her most famous Oscar speech, "You like me right now, you like me," was a window into her soul. Beneath the joy was a lifetime of craving validation, of desperately wanting to be seen and accepted for who she really was. Unfortunately, the shadow never left. Through the 80s and 90s, she continued to deliver unforgettable performances in Steel Magnolias, Forrest Gump, and countless others. She became a respected actress, director, and advocate. The shadow of her past never truly left, and in interviews, she often hinted at inner struggles. She wrestled with self-doubt, with the residue of abuse, with the ache of relationships gone wrong. Her later memoir, In Pieces, finally revealed the full story. The stepfather who abused her, the mother who hadn't protected her, the battles she fought behind the scenes. It shocked many, but for those who knew her work, it made sense. The depth she brought to every role had always come from a place of truth. She had spent her life turning pain into art. A life defined by both triumph and tragedy. At 78, Sally Field continues to embrace new creative challenges. In mid-2025,
Sally Field, the big screen legend, is in talks for her next big gig. The Hollywood Reporter revealing Field's in conversations to star in the adaptation of Remarkably Bright Creatures. It's based on the wildly popular novel by Shelby Van Pelt.
she signed on to star in the upcoming Netflix adaptation of Remarkably Bright Creatures, the best-selling novel by Shelby Van Pelt, where she's set to play Tova Sullivan, a lonely aquarium cleaner whose unlikely friendship with a giant octopus becomes transformative. She also made a striking public appearance recently, attending Los Angeles events with her trademark poise and newly embraced gray hair, prompting media praise for her elegance and authenticity at this stage of life. Beyond her performances, she is known for using her platform to advocate for causes close to her heart. She's a vocal supporter of women's reproductive rights, speaking openly about surviving an illegal abortion at age 17 in Mexico and the impact it had on her life and beliefs. She's long been an advocate for women's and LGBTQ rights, serving on the board of Vital Voices and receiving the Human Rights Campaign's Ally for Equality Award in 2012, especially moving to speak out in support of her gay son, Samuel.
I know that it's scary for a lot of people. I know that it seems vast and overwhelming. The Green New Deal, for example, is what I'm talking about. Yeah. But a tipping point will be reached when it'll be too late.
In December 2019, she was arrested alongside Jane Fonda while protesting climate change on Capitol Hill, showing her readiness to stand up for causes she believes in, even at personal risk. Sally Field's life story is a testament to transformation and a legacy defined by resilience and truth. She has grown from a girl who endured unspeakable trauma in silence to an artist whose vulnerability became her strength. Her 2018 memoir, In Pieces, laid bare the abuse she suffered, the relationships that hurt her, and the emotional terrain she navigated, giving voice to suffering carried for decades. Her public legacy is one of authenticity. She has portrayed powerful women facing adversity, mother figures full of nuance and warmth, and real-life characters with bravery and conviction. Off-screen, her honesty about trauma and her activism reflect the same courage she brings to every role. Sally Field's venture into Remarkably Bright Creatures opens a new chapter at a time when many might expect her to slow down. Instead, she remains creatively engaged, boldly choosing roles that speak to deeper themes of loss, connection, and unexpected redemption. Meanwhile, her red carpet presence and public voice suggest she has no intention of fading quietly into the background. Now, Sally Field stands not just as a Hollywood icon, but as a survivor and a storyteller for those who have been in her shoes. What do you think of her life and traumas? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. To enjoy more exciting videos, click play on the video on your screen. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when a new video is released.